Review code provided by Stride PR for ladiesgamers.com, where you can find my written review. YIIK, a postmodern RPG, is an RPG developed by YIIK Studios LLC and published by Eastbird Games. It released on the 18th of January for the Nintendo Switch, PS4 and PC for $30 Australian. A crow asks you to name various kinds of people in life, rather rudely assuming one has that many different friends. Then the game starts off on April 4th, 1999, with the protagonist Alex finally arriving home after graduating from college. YIIK is a weird game. Unlike most though, it doesn't take long to get to that point. Alex ends up chasing a funny looking cat into a factory. In the factory he finds a woman named Sammy who doesn't know what elevators are. Strange creatures kidnap Sammy and he runs away. Throughout the game, Alex attempts to find Sammy, recruiting new friends along the way. Enemies are encountered throughout towns, the overworld and dungeons. Combat is turn-based, however, in order to successfully land an attack you have to do action-based inputs. With Alex, you must press a button within two coloured sections on a record turn. Other characters have to press button prompts at the right time or release something. If you mess this up, your character fails their attack. When the enemy attacks you, you can press A, and if you hit the yellow section you take slightly less damage, and if you hit the red you dodge it. Enemies can also have attacks with 3 reds, so you have to hit them all in succession to avoid taking damage. Just 1 or 2 doesn't count and you get the full hit. There are also some attacks you can't dodge and can only take less damage from by a joystick and button input at the right time. With Alex, it wasn't until some hours later that the game tells you can press the button multiple times in the sections. Not that it matters much, since Alex is the most useless character, only able to hit about 2 points of damage at most. The only solution for which I found was to use the time energy, which shows up a bit after the start. If you didn't manage to read the game tips in the loading screens, you wouldn't even know about that. Time energy accumulates when you take damage. You can use it with the ZL button and it slows down time. Primarily, I would use this to dodge more difficult attacks rather than waste it on Alex's output. You can also fast forward the battle sections with the ZR button. There are, of course, items and skills. These skills also require different inputs, not that you get much instruction for them. Not only that, but even if you get the micro game right, it still might fail or have detriment. As is the case with one of Michael's skills, where you must take a bad photo but they still have to be in the picture. When a bad photo is taken, they'll get hit with a 6 status effect, but if a good one is taken, the defense and attack will be temporarily buffed. Whereas with one of Alex's skills for a status effect to cause sleep, sometimes you input it correctly and it doesn't do anything at all. Running away requires you to play a small 2D platforming section, in boss fights, except the first encounter with an entity. It is pointless as you'll be blocked. Thankfully, enemies that appear in-world do not respawn after being defeated, as even with a fast forward button the combat is painfully slow and regular enemy encounters can take around 10 minutes. Throughout the game you'll acquire new tools required to solve puzzles, such as a cat which you can use to hit switches from far away or an amp to blow up rocks. The cat is the most useful as you can shoot her at enemies to stun them so that you may temporarily get away or go through them. Dali, the cat, can also open chests from far away going through enemies. In the towns or at vending machines you can buy more healing items, equipment and weapons. Make sure to spend most money on healing items, as you might encounter a stretch or two where you can't get any more. Buying new weapons didn't really seem to improve the character's damage output at all. Rather than experience points automatically filling to level up, you must spend them at the mine dungeon. Via any phone booth, which is also your save point, you can go in and spend 100 experience points to level up. From there you can go through doors with different numbers to assign a stat that +1 or +0.5. If you're like me, you can also just talk to Marlene who will assign them for you. Make sure to walk through the book door or you might miss out on a skill. Unlike most retro-esque turn-based indie affairs, this game is done with 3D models. It looks a bit like a PS1 game but more pastel and with simpler textures and shading. The music is all over the place. There are several battle themes, some of which I like and quite a few I don't. As far as I'm aware, most of them don't sound like they're from 1999 either. It's arguable with some chiptune-esque tracks, but none of them really feel in place, even if some are nice. A few are just plain weird or, like the Mountain Town theme, uncomfortable. The cutscenes are presented in a visual novel style overlapped on top of the game, the cartoon art looking very different from the game. One character's art looked particularly different from the others and it was odd to see them next to each other. Other people have mentioned that they don't like the voice acting. I think it's okay, but there are changes in audio quality during voiced scenes. It's been argued that the game is quite inaccurate in its depiction of the times, such as Alex using records instead of CDs, and so many record stores being around. The way Alex dresses in particular being more of a modern hipster style. There's also a grave for Satoru Iwata in Windtown, which, in an attempt to be some kind of touching memorial, is just unnecessary and weird. I have a plethora of problems with this game to the point that I found it a chore to play. There are some major things such as the slowness of combat or the story, but there are also so very many quality of life issues. The main problem is that the story in general doesn't appeal to me, as it's about paranormal things and questioning reality and a touch of self-reflection. The only character I particularly liked was Sammy, and she's kidnapped at the start of the game. So in between the bad gameplay, I also have to deal with long, uninteresting cutscenes. A lot of the story is quite dragged out. At first I thought it was just Alex who talks too much, but then Claudio subjects me to a 2-minute rant about a pretend anime because Rory asked about his shirt. The most humorous parts of the writing were the loading screen tips. With that, there is only one actual game tip in there, being vital information hidden among jokes and life advice. There also isn't a lot of them, which is pretty bad considering the amount of loading screens you have to encounter, as there are loading screens before and after every battle, as well as going in and out of building or dungeon sections. They aren't particularly fast either, which, given the game's primitive presentation, seems ridiculous. Alex is essentially a turn to use items. There's a party member who can't attack at all, and he's more useful than Alex. The inventory is completely jumbled with no way to organise it, there's no maps, and the design of the towns are too large and hard to navigate. You can't get across them any faster until you get the skateboard about 9 hours into the game. The camera moves unnecessarily and pulls out too far back often. The overworld is a pain to navigate because you can't go past roads without the crossing marks. Marlene says you don't have to kill all enemies, which is well after you've already killed some, and you can't run away from boss fights, so it's a lie. It's also quite possible to save yourself into a corner. Some sections have flashing images, which makes hitting the button prompts difficult. When you continue after failing a battle, everyone starts back at the start of the battle. However, any items you used are still gone. There's a cutscene that plays every time you go up a ladder for whatever reason. The combat is too slow even with a fast forward button. The game doesn't instruct you on the minigame attacks. If you mess up the first part with a lot of them, you fail the whole attack. In Chandro's case, you could get 7 right in a row, but if you mess up one, then you'd only be able to score 1 damage by getting the last prompt right. There's no point to getting Claudio's attack perfect with only 1 enemy, as it doesn't do anything special then. Also, sometimes it says the damage is critical, which means absolutely nothing as it's the same amount of damage points. The UI is too small for play on TV. It works fine in handheld, but when sitting far from the TV you cannot read what their health is. Aside from falling through a bridge, I didn't even come across many bugs that some other players have. I'm not sure who would enjoy this game. You'd have to be at least past 35 to relate to the times, as it's set with young adults in 1999. On top of being interested in turn-based RPGs with this action-based combat style, while also being interested in a story about paranormal, world-ending, what is reality really type blathering, as well as the irregular music and old-style graphics. I know people that gamed back then who don't understand why you'd use an inferior presentation, even if trying to invoke nostalgia. From this you can tell that it certainly didn't appeal to me on top of the many problems I had with the game in general. It's hard to play a role-playing game when the combat is slow and the story is unappealing. I give YIIK, a postmodern RPG, and I dated a woman study major in college at 3 out of 10. YIIK, more like yuck.